ch.34, in the Great Martial Hall, Crown Prince meets Crown Prince 3. Si Lian was silent and John Woo shook his head. I didn't think you would know. The martial Heavenly Emperor inclined his head, gesturing for Si Lian to follow, and the two walked slowly towards the chambers behind the hall. As they walked, John Woo, with his hands cradled in front, commented, Chiang Lai is all grown up now. Naturally, Si Lian didn't dare answer that comment. John Woo continued. 800 years ago, when I sent you down, I told you to keep periodic communication with me so you wouldn't be rolling in the mud all by yourself. But the moment you went down, all communication was cut, and you had to go torment yourself. You've been ascended for some time now, but not once have you reported to the Great Martial Hall. If anyone else was this impertinent, the Palace of Ling Wen would have reproached them directly. Of course, Si Lian's "I'm sorry" earlier wasn't directed to this matter, and John Woo knew this too. If your apology was for those few sword stabbings, then let it go. You said so yourself, everything can be forgotten after stabbing. Si Lian grimaced. How could I forget? Then look to the future. There is still much we need you for. Si Lian rubbed his forehead. Chiang Lai is but a lowly rubbish god without power. There is no need for me. I only ask not to be burdensome. Why depreciate yourself? Didn't you perform splendidly in the last two cases? John Woo said. Except I may have offended General Pei. Ming Guang is fine, I'll watch over him, you don't need to worry. However, John Woo turned around. Tell me, what kind of extraordinary character did you engage with when you descended this time? Si Lian raised his hand. My lord, I swear I did nothing. Just one day by chance I encountered an interesting child on the road, and we spent some time together. I didn't think much of it. John Woo nodded. Chance encounter, child, supreme ghost king. Chiang Lai, you do know that, if Ming Guang was to question you further and you had confessed this in front of the other officials, what the consequences would be? No one would believe you. Chiang Lai knows, Si Lian replied woefully. Sir, I am grateful for my lord's timely intervention. My lord, you're not actually going to interrogate me, are you? I wouldn't collude with the ghost realm. These are all absurd concerns. Naturally, I know you would not intentionally collude with the ghost realm, John Woo said. I am grateful for my lord's trust, Si Lian replied. However, with things thus, it may no longer be appropriate to send you to investigate an important matter that has surfaced. What is it? Si Lian inquired. At this time, the two of them had reached the chamber behind the Great Hall. The Great Hall and the inner chamber were separated by a large mural, the front depicting the Golden Palace towering through a sea of clouds, radiant and brilliant. The back side of the mural was another, depicting mountains and valleys of over 10,000 miles. On the map there were many tiny pearls, like stars. Each of these stars marked a great martial temple in the mortal realm. A pearl embedded on the map meant there was a great martial temple built there. 800 years ago, when John Woo brought the Si Lian, who had ascended for the first time to the inner chamber, the pearl stars on the mural weren't as dense. But now, the shimmering jewels seemed to be plentifully bestrewn, overwhelming in their radiance. John Woo stood before the mural and spoke. 7 days ago, many saw with their own eyes a dragon of fire, abruptly soaring to the sky from a forest in the east. Si Lian's face grew serious hearing those words. John Woo, with one hand behind his back, used the other and softly knocked on the mural once. That dragon of fire lasted for 2 incense time before burning out. In that time, many witnessed the sight, but not a single person was injured. Do you know what that means? The spell for the ascending fire dragon emits intense flames that do not harm. It's a call for help, Si Lian replied. That is correct. It was a distress signal, and it came from a heavenly official, John Woo said. It's no ordinary call for help, it's one of desperation, Si Lian added. This ascending fire dragon spell, with its intense flames that would not harm, took an immense amount of power. If the casting official was not careful, they could very well implode and destroy their spiritual core. Therefore, unless they were at the end of their rope, very few would go this route. Now that it had appeared, it meant a heavenly official had fallen into grave danger. Are there any officials whose whereabouts are unknown recently? Si Lian asked. The matter with the Banyu Pass was not the only reason all the officials were summoned back to court. This time, the main purpose was to use this chance to investigate everyone's whereabouts. Other than those who usually do not show, like the Rain Master and the Earth Master, even those who couldn't make it back reported in. Si Lian hummed for a moment, then speculated, maybe it wasn't any of the officials from this term. Maybe it's one of the retired officials. If that's the case, then I'm afraid our perimeters will largely expand. Many of the retired officials have long lost contact with the heavens. It would be difficult to determine who is the one in peril, John Woo said. So, this was probably why Ling Wen and many of the civil officials had dark circles under their eyes there. Feet weak, they were busy working on this case, and certainly wouldn't have the time to investigate that boy with the human face disease from Mount Yujun. To corner a heavenly official to the point of using such a self-destructive spell, it must be the doing of great evil. Are there any demonic gatherings or lairs in that area? There are, John Woo replied. And it's very close to me. Do you know of Ghost City? Si Lian thought about it and replied, I've heard of it. Ghost City was the most prosperous place within the ghost realm, situated right at the crossroads of the mortal and the ghost realms. This was where all manner of spirits, ghosts, demons and monsters gathered in swarms to conduct trade and exchanges. Cultivators of certain levels would also go to do business or seek information. Sometimes, there would also be heavenly officials in disguise, mixing in for curiosity's sake or other unknown reasons. Of course, there were also those who'd enter by mistake and would either be eaten alive or scared to death. Ever since ancient times, although not as ancient as Si Lian, there had always been many tales of the ghost city in the mortal realm. Si Lian remembered one of the stories had a man traveling at night who saw a bustling market before him with large red lanterns and colorful signs. He entered the market in high spirits, but found that everyone around him had a mask, and if they were not hooded, then they were extremely ugly, very curious. He didn't think deeply about it, and bought a bowl of noodles and sat down to eat. But as he ate, the food didn't feel right. When he looked closely, the noodles were actually squirming strands of hair. Si Lian brought himself back to the present, and Zhang Wu continued. After seeing that pillar of fire, I immediately sent officials to go investigate the area, but there was no evidence of anything, so it's very possible that they've moved to the ghost city. However, the heavenly realm and the ghost realm have always drawn very clear borders. Without enough proof, we cannot intrude on ghost city. Which is why, this time, I need someone to descend in secret and probe Ghost City. We can't alert the enemy and have them move again. Is that why this couldn't be discussed openly at the Great Hall with everyone, and let too many know? Si Lian said. That is correct, Zhang Wu replied. Then my lord, pray give Xianlei the command. The first candidate I had in mind was originally you, Zhang Wu said. But for this, it may be inconvenient for you to go. How would it be inconvenient? Si Lian asked. First, the East is ruled by Lang Qianqiu. If you should go, you must cooperate with him, Zhang Wu said. Si Lian responded, that would not be a problem, please do not worry. Second, Zhang Wu continued. Do you know whose territory the ghost city sits in? Taken aback, Si Lian said, unsure, is it Hua Cheng? Zhang Wu nodded slowly, and Si Lian's guess was confirmed. But then, something else came to mind. That pillar of fire in the eastern forest blazed up 7 days ago. Coincidentally, it was 7 days ago when Hua Cheng left Puqi Shrine. The timing was impeccable. Was there a connection between the two events? Looks like your relationship with him is not bad, which isn't a problem, Zhang Wu said. The only problem is whether he's involved. If you feel awkward, then do not force yourself. If you have any other suggestions or anyone you'd nominate, do let me know. However, Si Lian still said, let me go. I don't think that Crimson Rain Swordflower is a disingenuous individual. Zhang Wu looked at him. Xianlei, I know you're very capable and know what you're doing. However, I also know you always think the best of everyone. Hearing his words, Si Lian gave a small smile. Please don't say it like I'm a princess who has never left home. Those words really don't suit me anymore. Zhang Wu still shook his head. I shouldn't comment on the friends you make, but I will still say this, be careful of Hua Cheng. Hearing this, Si Lian lowered his head in a bow, and said nothing. He should have responded with, yes, my lord, after all, it was a habit by now. Yet, for some reason, he really didn't want to say this, yes. Be especially careful of that wicked blade of his, Zhang Wu continued. What do you mean? Si Lian asked, curious. The scimitar Yiming. It is a cursed blade, a blade of misfortune. An evil weapon such as that would need a terrifyingly cruel sacrifice and a bloody determination before it could be forged. Do not touch it, and do not let it injure you either, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable, Zhang Wu replied. Si Lian couldn't tell where his sudden surge of confidence came from, but inwardly, he thought, San Lang probably wouldn't strike him with a blade. Still, he responded, Xianlei understands. Zhang Wu nodded again. I will naturally be at ease with you taking this case. If you don't feel any awkwardness, then even better. But still, going on this mission by yourself may be too much. Are there any other officials you'd like me to appoint to this case? It really doesn't matter, Si Lian said after some thought. But preferably someone easy to get along with. It'd be good if they're powerful, so they can lend me some spiritual power from time to time. Zhang Wu smiled. You struck out both Nan Yang and Xuan Zhen with the first condition. Truly, no one could say that the Feng Xin and new king of today were personalities that were easy to get along with, and Si Lian started chuckling too. How goes between the three of you? Have you spoken with them yet? Zhang Wu asked. The Heavenly Emperor himself never entered the communication array, and thus was naturally unaware of the buzzing chit-chat that went on among the officials. We spoke a few words, Si Lian replied. It's been so many years, and yet you have only spoken a few words. Zhang Wu inquired. Oh, that's right. I heard when you ascended this time, you destroyed many of your fellow officials' palaces and properties. And one of them was Nan Yang. Si Lian argued back, I paid back the debt. All 8,880,000 merits. And for this, I need to thank my Lord for giving me the opportunity to go to Mount Yujun. Thank Nan Yang, Zhang Wu replied. I heard Ling Wen say it was he who privately approached her and said there wasn't any need for you to pay back the reconstruction cost. Si Lian was stunned. I didn't know about this at all. No wonder those 8,880,000 merits were so easily repaid, so much of it was already forgiven. Yet at the time, it was the palace of Nanyang that was the most damaged. They say half of the golden roof had collapsed. Nanyang made sure Ling Wen would not tell you, so naturally you were unaware. Since he did not want you to know, then it would be best to keep pretending to be ignorant, Zhang Wu said. Si Lian didn't know how to feel about this. Complicated and bittersweet, his mind was clouded and all over the place. At last, he sighed soundlessly and thought, truly, in this world, the words don't tell anyone are empty. Zhang Wu contemplated for a moment, then said, if Nanyang and Xuanzhen will not do, how about the Wind Master? Si Lian pondered the option. Lord Windmaster is very good, but I don't know if she would want to go on this mission with me. The Windmaster is powerful, Zhang Wu said. A lively person who enjoys making friends, and thus matches your first condition of easy to get along with. After the business with Banyu, the Windmaster has a good impression of you as well. I think you two will be all right. If you do not have any other questions, then descend with the Windmaster and investigate the Ghost City. Also, yes, Zhang Wu said languidly, work hard, but do not force yourself. Si Lian was startled by those words, and smiled. What is my lord saying? I'm not forcing myself. Zhang Wu patted Si Lian's shoulders. Return to the Palace of Chiang Lai to rest for now. I'll send word to summon the Wind Master. Si Lian blinked. I don't have enough merits, so no palace has been erected. The Palace of Chiang Lai from the past has long since been torn down, so what Palace of Chiang Lai I've granted you a new one, Junwoo said. You cannot possibly always squeeze into that broken down little shrine. Si Lian left the great martial hall, and was led to the Palace of Chiang Lai by a junior official from Junwoo's palace. This Palace of Chiang Lai was practically exactly the same as the one he had in the past, red glass walls. Sumptuous and elegant. He stood outside the palace gates for a long time, but not a shred of desire to enter came to him. A scrapper mortal was still best suited for a scrapped shrine, after all. A proud and glamorous heavenly palace like this wasn't a place he could stay. He loitered outside the entrance and waited for that Lord Wind Master to come find him, but after a while the one who appeared wasn't the lady cultivator in white, but another white-clad cultivator. The cultivator had a glowing, spiritual aura in abundance surrounding him. It was the one from the meeting at the Great Martial Hall who was randomly fighting Pei Ming, Qingxuan. He waved his wrist, a smile hanging off his lips. Greetings, Your Highness. Si Lian smiled back. Greetings, fellow cultivator. Truthfully, he really wanted to ask who he was, but thought it'd be rude to do so. He was about to sneak a peek at his scroll to see just which heavenly official was named Qingxuan, when the person in question walked up to him and exclaimed, "Let's go. Let's go check out down below." Si Lian was taken aback. "My friend, I'm waiting for someone." Hearing this, the cultivator placed his whisk into the back collar of his outer robe and turned around in wonder. "Who are you waiting for?" "I'm waiting for the Wind Master," Si Lian replied. The white-clad cultivator looked even more confused. "I'm right here." Si Lian's brows jumped. "You're the Wind Master." The other flashed open his fan, and started fanning. "I am the Wind Master, was there ever any doubt? Did you not know who I was? Have you never heard of my name, the Wind Master Qingxuan?" His tone was irrefutable and absolute, strong and confident, as if Si Lian not knowing his name was an impossible thing to happen. The folding fan had the word for wind, Fang, written santidly on the front. The backside had 3 inclining lines drawn, the exact same fan the lady cultivator in white had in her hand. Si Lian suddenly recalled Fu Yao had mentioned that some upper court heavenly officials, under special circumstances, had the ability to transform their appearance. While at Banyu, Nanfang had also uttered an incomplete sentence. The Wind Master had always been. Had always been. Been what? A man! Exclamation mark. After getting dragged for a few steps, Si Lian still couldn't fully process this information. Lord Wind Master, you, why did you disguise yourself as a woman last time? What? Was I not beautiful? The Wind Master asked. Yes. But Si Lian was still confused. If I was beautiful, then there's no but. As long as I looked good. The Wind Master smiled brightly. Odd. Course it's because I'd look good that I was in disguise. Having said that, he looked to have suddenly come to an idea, and closed his fan. He gave Si Lian a once-over with a calculated look, then spoke after a moment. Speaking of which, don't we need to be undercover for this mission to the Ghost City? Si Lian. Next chapter. Ch.35, enter the Ghost City. Rendezvous with the Ghost King. Much ashamed, it wasn't until 4 hours later that Si Lian had the time to sneak a peek at his scroll, and finally learn the backstory of this Wind Master. The 5 elemental masters of the heavens used their titles to replace their surnames. For example, before the Earth Master ascended, his mortal name was called Ming Yi. After ascension, he was to be addressed as Earth Master Yi. As for the Wind Master, his old name was Shi Qingxuan, and after ascension he was called Wind Master Qingxuan. Much fitting his title, his personality was like a breeze. He was sociable and generous, mindless of petty details, and very popular in the heavens as a parent. From him easily handing out 10,000 merits in the communication array. But at the end of the day, as his older brother was the god who controlled mortal wealth, of course the Windmaster was generous and mindless of petty details. Indeed, the older brother of Windmaster Qingxuan was the one called Water Tyrant, the Water Master. Wudu. Descending to the underworld together, the 2 gods walked side by side, chatting as they traveled. Lian had his arms crossed, and commented in amazement, the Pei family producing 2 ascended. Generals under one name was already a legend, but you and your brother, 1 wind 1 water, ascending at the same time, is truly a tale of wonder. It must be known that even in a million, there may not be that one who had the ability to ascend. Pei Ming and Pei Su were separated by a few hundred years, and Pei Su wasn't even a direct descendant. He was from Pei Ming's brother's branch of the family, that was who knows how many times removed. Through the generations, the Water Master Wudu and the Wind Master Qingxuan were real blood related. Brothers, a real pair of ascended officials from the same house, thus truly incredible. Shi Qingxuan laughed it off. It's nothing. My brother and I were born from the same mother, grew up together, went to school together, cultivated together, so naturally we descend together in the same lifetime. Lian also learned about this when he was cramming from the scroll earlier. Shi Wudu ascended first, but after only a few years, his brother Shi Qingxuan also successfully passed a heavenly calamity. Mortals often worshipped the 2 heavenly officials together in the same temple, and praised them as equals. It was obvious the 2 brothers enjoyed a good relationship. As San Lang and Nan Feng had mentioned, the Water Master must be the reason Pei Ming wouldn't touch the Wind Master. After all, the brother of the Water Tyrant was not one to be picked on easily. Coming to this point, Lian thought of another detail, and considered it before asking Lord Wind Master at the Great Martial Hall earlier. The way General Pei spoke, it sounded as if he shared a friendship with your brother. Wouldn't your filing the complaint against General Pei Jr. affect? Na Shi Qingxuan replied. My brother already knows I can't stand Pei Ming. Knowing is one thing, action is another, Lian said. Wouldn't all of this cause a rift between the Water Master and General Pei? If it caused a rift, even better. I wish my brother would stop hanging out with him, and leave the Three Tumors moniker behind one day, Shi Qingxuan said. Lian stopped. What 3 tumors? Shi Qingxuan exclaimed, astonished. What? You don't know about this either? Fine, whatever. I now know. You're not up to date with anything. You can just listen for giggles. The 3 tumors is the nickname given to the 3 heavenly officials who don't have a good rep, but have a good relationship with each other. They're Ming Guang, Ling Wen, and my brother. I can't believe it's not Lian, and Lian thought. Shi Qingxuan fanned his Wind Master fan and continued, even if I can't stand him, the whole business this time around was started by Little Pei himself. There's no way I'd let Pei Ming pin this on the Guoxiao. Ban you and protect Little Pei. It doesn't matter if you're a mortal, or a god, or a ghost, you have to be responsible for your own actions. Bullying a little girl is low. The last line was uttered in contempt, and Si Lian smiled. The Wind Master is a defender of justice. Shi Qingxuan laughed. You're not bad yourself. I've heard rumors about the Banyu Pass here and there, but never had the time to investigate, plus my brother would yell at me about it. With so much on my plate, I'd forgotten. When I heard you inquire about it in the communication array the other day, it reminded me there was such a case, and so I went to check it out. Turns out not only did you ask, you'd even gone yourself. So I thought, dang, what a guy. This Wind Master certainly had an extremely straightforward and interesting personality, and Si Lian could understand now why he was so popular in the heavens. He hadn't thought that, after ascension, he'd be able to form a friendship with a heavenly official like this, and couldn't help but smile happily. But just as he turned his head to face him, the white-clad cultivator beside him was transformed to a lady in white. It was so sudden, Si Lian almost tripped in his step. Lord Wind Master, why the sudden transformation? Oh, truth be told, I'm actually more powerful in this form, Shi Qingxuan replied. As aforementioned, the Wind Master and the Water Master were often worshipped together. However, this also produced a bizarre accident. Perhaps people thought that worshipping two male gods together in one temple was weird. Lords and ladies go hand in hand, handsome and beautiful make a pair, that should be the way. Thus, after a while, someone somewhere sculpted the Wind Master as a goddess. Never mind the goddess statue, they had to make up stories to go with it too, something along the lines of the wind and water gods used to be brother and sister. There was even a version where they were husband and wife. After a few hundred years, the stories spread, and from them came even more outlandish legends. Once in a while, the two officials would read through the tales out of curiosity, but each time they would cringe and fill an entire co-op with goosebumps. Nonetheless, there were more than a few who believed in those outrageous stories, and the Wind Master's gender started getting mixed up. My lady, prithee watch over me could be heard all over the place. Thus, Shi Qingxuan gained the name Lady Wind Master. Although silly, it was actually not that rare of an occurrence. Ling Wen, for example, also had a similar experience. Ling Wen was a lady official, but she didn't dress colorfully and fashionably like the other lady deities. She was often in black, serious and competent, and spent her days madly working through stacks and stacks of administrative scrolls in her palace. Although her personality was partly to blame, much of it was due to another reason. If one should ask any mortal, is Ling Wen a man or a woman? Anyone would respond with confidence, a man. A civil god was of course a male. For this alone, when Ling Wen ascended, she suffered disadvantages. She was a civil goddess, but many in the mortal realm thought, how could women be in that position? How could ladies possibly ensure good fortune in literary competence? It must not be effective. Thus, although She worked hard, she still had very few devotees. Later, some of the devotees couldn't get over it and rebuilt her statues into male gods, transforming her from the goddess Ling Wen to the god Ling Wen, and even made up an entire extravagant backstory. After this change, her temples became prosperous, and everyone praised how effective the god Ling Wen was. But the truth was, an official was an official. Spiritual powers were all the same, and the legends were all fake. Still, the people ate him up. Since then, when Ling Wen needed to appear in dreams, she could only do so in a male form. By the same logic, people believed that it was more appropriate to worship a man and a woman as a pair. In the wind and water temples, who cared if you were a god or a ghost? You must appear as people believed. Appearances could be different by 1,000,000 miles, and people would still see what they wanted to see. The upper court heavenly officials no longer cared for this kind of thing. As for Shi Qingxuan himself, by Si Lian's own observations, he didn't appear to mind at all. In fact, he was completely immersed and enjoying himself, and was even passionately dragging others into it, making Si Lian wonder about the real identity of the lady in black that was with the Wind Master the last time. In the 4 hours that they had spent traveling to the underworld together, Shi Qingxuan had been tirelessly trying to persuade Si Lian into disguising himself as a woman, with very convincing reasons like, women have stronger auras of yin. 32. Therefore it's much easier to hide in the ghost city crowds. Si Lian thought about it, and courteously rejected the idea. I don't have enough power to transform. I'll lend you my powers. Shi Qingxuan replied excitedly. That's the whole reason why the heavenly emperor appointed me to this mission. No, my lord, please save your powers for when we're actually fighting the enemy. Shi Qingxuan couldn't persuade Si Lian, so she stopped pushing. At this time, the two had reached a wild field in the middle of nowhere. The night had deepened, and crows cawed crazedly in the darkness, creating an eerie atmosphere. Si Lian scanned around and said, let's wait here. An evil aura fills the air here, and there's a large graveyard nearby, so there's definitely going to be 1 or 2 going to the market. We'll follow them when the time comes. Thus, the two crouched on top of a burial mound and waited. A moment later, Shi Qingxuan put one hand into a sleeve, rummaged around, and dug out a small jug of ooze. You want some? Si Lian reached for the jug and took a small sip, feeling his throat burn, and gave the jug back. Thanks. Shi Qingxuan took the jug and gulped a couple swallows. You can't drink. I can, Si Lian replied. But drinking causes insanity, so just a taste is enough. What time is it? Shi Qingxuan hummed, and replied, it's midnight. Must be soon then, Si Lian said. Just as he finished his sentence, the two saw a faint row of lights appear deep in the woods. That faint row of lights slowly came closer and closer, until finally, the two could see it was a group of expressionless women dressed in white, walking in a line. Some were old, some were young, some beautiful, some ugly, each wearing funeral garb with a white lantern in hand, walking at an easy pace. They must be female ghosts heading to the ghost city markets in the deep night. Let's follow them, Si Lian said under his breath. Shi Qingxuan nodded, took a last swig from the jug and threw it aside. The two stood up and casually trailed behind the group of ghosts. The two had already prepared beforehand and erased all their spiritual aura when they walked. They were like people-shaped logs without a scent of life. The band of female ghosts before them held their white lanterns and followed an unknown path in the darkened woods, strolled while chatting in high-pitched, delicate voices. "I'm so glad the ghost city's opened again. I need a facial," one said. "What happened to your face? Didn't you just recently get a facial?" Another replied. The first one responded, "It rotted again." Sai, the one who serviced me last time, said it was guaranteed. Fresh for a year. It hasn't even been half a year. Si Lian and Shi Qingxuan trailed behind them, listening to their chatter, and didn't speak a word. When they heard something funny, they'd only lift their lips and eye each other. After about an hour, the group came to a valley. Red light emitted from deep within the valley, and there seemed to be music wafting in the ethereal night. Si Lian grew more and more curious to finally see for himself what the ghost city looked like. As they were entering the valley, however, the last one in the line of ghosts suddenly turned her head and discovered them. Confused, she asked, "Who are you two?" The question made all the pale-faced heads turn, and the women surrounded them, curious. "When did they start following us?" "Those two weren't part of the group when we left the burial grounds." "Which burial ground did you come from? How come we've never seen your faces before?" Si Lian cleared his throat. "We came from a burial ground much further away, so of course you've never seen us." Shi Qingxuan smiled too. "That's right. We've traveled thousands of miles just for the ghost city." The group of white-clad female ghosts were silent and expressionlessly stared at them. If it was anyone else, they'd probably fall to the ground shivering in fright. Si Lian wasn't afraid of having their identities exposed. These weak feral ghosts had no power over them. However, since the ghost city was right before their eyes, it wouldn't be wise to start anything in such close distance to the target, lest they alert their enemy. Just then, one of the women staring at Shi Qingxuan spoke up languidly. "Mei Mei, 33. Your face is very nicely maintained," she said. Si Lian and Shi Qingxuan stopped. Immediately, the two of them nodded uniformly. Si Lian replied, "It's all right, not bad." Shi Qingxuan copied his tone and said, "Pretty good, right?" All the female ghosts then approached and started a discussion. "Yeah, not rotten at all." "Mei Mei, where did you get your facials done? What's your secret? Can you recommend a place?" Shi Qingxuan didn't know how to respond, so she only laughed awkwardly to delay answering. Just then, the group turned around, and a sudden crimson brightness flashed into their eyes. A mysterious and haunted world opened before them. A long street appeared. It was so long there was no end in sight. Along the street were all manners of bustling stores and stalls. Colorful signs were flown high above, and giant red lanterns were hung low. Pedestrians filled the street, many wearing masks of faces, crying, laughing, angry, some human, some not human. Those without masks could only be described as bizarre. Some had large heads and small bodies, some skinny as a bamboo stick, some flat like a pancake, pressing on the ground, letting pedestrians walk all over them while complaining. Si Lian was careful not to step on anything weird. When he passed by a food stall, he saw the stall owner use a giant bone to stir a giant pot of soup. While it stirred, spit would spill from between its teeth, dripping into the soup, and in that soup filled with weird colors floated many an eyeball. Si Lian watched and suddenly gained confidence. On the other side, there were strange buskers performing. A buff, burly man had a small ghost weak as a chick in his hold, and the man opened his mouth to blow massive flames to barbecue the small ghost, while it squealed like a dying pig, writhing. The crowd cheered and shrieked, shouting encore. There were even insane individuals randomly throwing money into the air, and when one sip of it flew before Si Lian, he grabbed one and flipped it over. It was money of the dead, as he thought. As he walked, there was a butcher's stall with a row of crestfallen human heads, hung in order of age, as indicated on their price tags. A child's head was this much, a youth's meat was that much, a grown man's flesh costed this amount, a mature woman's sinews was charged as much, and so on. The one dressed in an apron with a butcher knife in hand was a boar with black, thick hair, and under its knife getting butchered was a muscular human leg, still twitching. This was truly a swarm of evil, the chaos of hell. Humans butchering pigs was a common sight, but pigs butchering humans wasn't, so Si Lian couldn't help but steal a few extra peeks. The boar noticed him watching and immediately reacted. "What are ya looking at? You buyin'?" Si Lian shook his head. "No." The boar butcher continued to chop onto the cutting board violently, blood spraying all over. He yelled, voice rough, "If you ain't buyin', then don't watch. Fucking try to start something. Get outta here." Si Lian got out of there. But just as his steps quickened, he suddenly realized something very bad. That group of female ghosts and Shi Qingxuan had disappeared without a trace. In shock, Si Lian wanted to connect with the Wind Master at once within the communication array, afraid that she really got dragged away by those ghosts to do facials. However, this was Ghost City, and the spells used by Heaven were heavily restricted. The connection to the array didn't work, so he had to wander the streets to search for the missing Wind Master. As he walked, someone suddenly grabbed him. Already alert and tense, Si Lian instantly reacted. "Who?" Exclamation mark. The one who stopped him was a woman, and was surprised by Si Lian's reaction. But after seeing his face clearly, she started giggling, playing coy. "Hey there, little Gege. You're lookin' mighty fine." This woman was in an exceedingly revealing dress, her makeup terrifyingly heavy, the white foundation uneven. When she opened her mouth, clumps of it would fall off her face. Her bosom was stuffed full, as if something was filled in her flesh. Truly, a shocking sight. Si Lian gently pushed away her thin, claw-like fingers, and said, "My lady, there's no need to speak like this." The woman was taken aback, then burst out laughing. "Dear Lord. My lady. Who the hell still calls me a lady in this day and age? Ha ha." All the passers-by seemed to think it was funny too, and started laughing along. Si Lian shook his head. But before he could speak, the woman pounced on him. "Don't go. Little Gege, I like you. Come and have fun with me all night, I won't ask for payment." She pouted and winked. But I will charge. He. Si Lian sighed and prayed inwardly, then unobtrusively but firmly pushed her away. He chided gently. My lady, please. The woman seemed annoyed now, and screeched, Stop calling me lady, no one cares for it. Quit wasting my time, ya coming or not. To tempt Si Lian further, the woman suddenly unlaced her already revealing shirt. Si Lian wasn't prepared to face such a bold move, and sighed again before turning away and continuing on his way. The female ghost chased after him and continued her seduction. Do ya like what you see? Little did she realize, Si Lian had grown up in the royal holy pavilion, practicing abstinence for most of his mortal life. His body and mind had always been as steady as the mountains. It didn't matter what he saw, his heart was still like water. Anything unseemly would have him automatically chant sutras in his mind, calming his spirit. Unsuccessful in her temptation, the female ghost's expression changed, and she started yelling, You don't want any o' this. Are ya even a man? Si Lian dropped his eyes. I am. Then prove it. The female ghost yelled. From the sidelines, a passerby laughed mockingly. You slut. He thinks you're old and ugly, and want none o'. You. What are ya doing so clingy? Hearing those words, Si Lian deadpanned with a straight face, It's not that. It's because I have an unspeakable affliction. I can't get erect. Everyone fell silent. Then within an instant they all roared and hollered with laughter. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A. The victim of ridicule was now Si Lian. No one had ever met a man who was brave enough to announce to the world that they had such a problem. However, to someone like Si Lian, it didn't matter whether his private member was functional or not, so he already developed the habit of using that as an excuse to get out of these kinds of situations. And it was a method that worked every single time. Sure enough, the female ghost redid her shirt and stopped tinging onto him. No wonder you're like this. What a pig. If ya have a problem, why didn't you say so sooner? PFFT. Not far behind them, the boar butcher threw down his knife again and yelled, Fucking slut. What's that? You say. What's wrong with pigs? The female ghost wasn't scared, and yelled right back, Yeah, what's wrong with pigs? Fucking animals. Soon, the long street was filled with shouting and squawking, people hollering. That female ghost Lan Chang is startin' shit again. Butcher Chu is choppin' ghosts. The two sides buzzed back and forth, rowdy and chaotic, and in the midst of that pandemonium, Si Lian was finally able to slip away. After walking for a bit, he looked back over to where the crowd was and heaved a sigh. Si Lian continued walking and soon came upon another rowdy crowd ahead, and he stopped in front of a gigantic red building. This building was extraordinarily grandiose and imposing. Its columns, roofs, walls, everything was painted in a magnificent bright red, and the floors were covered in thick, exquisite carpet. If it must be compared, this building was on par with the heavenly palaces. The only difference was that it was more bedazzling than dignified. Large crowds went in and out of the doors, and the inside was filled with loud, excited voices, very lively. Upon a closer look, Si Lian found that this place was a gambler's den. Si Lian walked up to the doors, and on the two pillars at the entrance, there was a set of verses. The left Set money over life, the right set gains over shame. On the top horizontal beam it said, H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A. It was vulgar and crass, not worthy of being entrance verses. 34. The calligraphy was also wild, clumsy, and frenzied, a disgrace to call it calligraphy at all. It was as if someone took a brush whilst drunk and scribbled with malintent, and the words got blown by a blast of evil aura before they were formed thus. Si Lian was once heir to the throne, and his calligraphy was taught by the best teachers in the land. The characters he saw before him now were a real tragedy. In fact, the characters were so hellish that Si Lian was starting to think they were kind of funny, and shook his head. The Windmaster wouldn't be hanging around here, he'd have a better chance searching in beauty parlors for female ghosts. He certainly should have just moved on, yet inexplicably, after only a few steps, he turned around and went inside. In the main hall of the gambler's den, crowds were packed to the brim, innumerous heads moving. Laughter and desperate cries crammed the air. Si Lian had only descended a few steps when he suddenly heard screaming, and when he looked to where it had come from, 4 masked bouncers were walking over carrying another. That man was in pain, writhing and howling whilst being carried, and a trail of blood followed. Turns out, both of his legs were cleanly cut off from the knees, and blood was pouring from the stumps. A small ghost followed closely, and greedily licked up all the blood on the floor as they went. It was a terrifying sight, yet no one in the gambler's den spared it any looks, and continued to shout and cheer, rolling about. Though, of course, many who gambled here weren't people, and if they were, then they were no ordinary humans. Si Lian slighted his body to let past the 4 bouncers carrying the man, and then continued going deeper into the den. A petite attendant in a laughing mask approached him and welcomed him. "Sir, are you here to play?" Si Lian gave a small smile. "I don't have money on me." "Mind if I just look?" In his experience, usually if you said those words in any establishment, you'd get booted. Why would you enter without money? Yet the petite attendant still giggled. "No money is not a problem. Those who play here don't really use money to gamble." "Really?" Si Lian asked. The petite attendant covered her mouth. "Really? Sir, why don't you come with me?" She waved at Si Lian, and sashayed away. Si Lian followed behind her without a word, but carefully observed all around. This gambler's den from the inside out was exceedingly extravagant and stylish, but not tacky. It was a building rich with taste. The petite attendant brought Si Lian to the very back of the main hall. There was a long table that was packed like sardines. Si Lian had only just approached, and he heard a man cry, "I bet my arm." There were too many onlookers. Si Lian couldn't get through, and could only listen from outside the crowd. Suddenly, he heard another voice lazily responding, "No need. Never mind your arm. Even your shit life is worthless here." Hearing the voice, Si Lian's heart jumped. He silently mouthed the name, San Lang. What he heard was indeed the voice of that young man. Yet it was slightly deeper than he remembered. However, it was because of this that it sounded even more pleasing to the ears. Although he was Surrounded by boisterous brouhahas, the voice still rang loud and clear, and cut through the noise of the gambler's den and into his ears. Si Lian looked up and found that behind the long table there was a screen curtain. And behind the curtain, he could see a faint red figure laid back leisurely on a long chair. 32 Yin, from Yin Yang. Yin represents the moon, the shadows, and femininity. 33 Mei Mei is a familiar address for little sister. 34 entrance verses are 3 lines of poetry that express the meaning, theme of the establishment, or are just for good luck. 1 line on each side of the door, and 1 over the top.